Hey folks, your OS Reviews. You're watching our video first look and a quick review of the F6S Pro. This is a Bluetooth keyboard case for the iPad Pro. It's for the 9.7-inch version, and it comes in a few different colors that matches the design philosophy of the current iPad line. This one is just a generic kind of black color, but it also comes in a more unique and eye-catching rose gold and golden tones. It's built out of plastic, so it's still fairly lightweight and uses an older Bluetooth version 3.0 for connection, as opposed to Bluetooth version 4, 4.2, or even 5.0, which is something to quickly point out, and it transforms the iPad into a pseudo laptop-like experience, or a two-in-one that you can fold down to close and then take with you and open again for typing purposes. Has island or chiclet style keys, but there's no trackpad, so you still have to use a touchscreen display for navigation. Battery life is pretty good. I would say it lasted for around a month or so of standby and use here and there, which is decent, and it has a angle of up to 135 degrees, so the tilt is also fairly comfortable. Comes with a backlight of 7 different colors. You can still use it under low light environments, and the battery here will charge up in under 4 hours. It's 500 milliamp hours, which is a little bit longer than your average keyboard case that I've seen in the past. Other contents in the packaging here include the case itself, which we'll examine in terms of its design in a second. There's also a user manual, and there's the standard micro USB charging cable. Taking a look at the design of the case next, it's made of this fusion between polycarbonate plastic as well as some aluminum accents here and there, so it feels well constructed as a sub $60 keyboard case that you can find on Amazon. So it's fairly premium but also kind of discreet. There's no overt logos or branding going on, and on the very side here there's access to the micro USB port for charging and a dedicated power on-off switch. These switches aren't covered up by rubber flaps, so this isn't a rugged case in the sense that you can drop it or submerge it into water, and for those purposes it won't survive, just like other keyboard cases we've seen in the past. It still remains a relatively slim portfolio for the iPad Pro, as you can see here, so it's easy to take with you when you're traveling and pop into a backpack. The hinge here is held into place using magnets, so we can actually remove this completely just by popping it off, and the back of the case is made out of plastic as opposed to aluminum like the base of the keyboard is. So the shell that holds the iPad into place is slightly more lightweight, and there's a reason for this. When you flip open the case, again kind of like a laptop, this prevents the device from being top heavy, since there's going to be an iPad held into place and kind of flopping over when you're not using it. Instead, since the base here is the part that's made out of aluminum, it makes the base quite stable, even if you're typing on your lap, although that's still not completely ideal since the hinge is still held into place using magnets as opposed to a more mechanical design like a real folding laptop hinge. Otherwise, you can see that when the device is open, we have access to the compartment that holds the iPad into place. There's a few accents that prevents the iPad from getting scratched, but it's a relatively slim case that's made out of these polycarbonate frames that seems like it's a one-piece shell, and there are cutouts for the 3.5mm headphone jack, for the speakers, camera, switches. All those things can still be accessed, including the charging port, when you have it inside the keyboard case. So again, it's not a rugged case, but it works. I can detach it from the keyboard part completely if I wanted to, and just use this as a regular iPad case, although that loses its appeal in my opinion, since it's not a particularly unique design. However, it attaches fairly well, and when you're ready, you can pop it up at various angles for comfortable typing. So let's take a quick look at the design of the keyboard next. Again, it's a traditional island or chiclet style keyboard, which is in the style of many Apple products. It's not a full-size keyboard. It's slightly smaller than a regular 15.6-inch keyboard you have on a laptop, but it's pretty comfortable, and there's a nice amount of travel and feedback when you're typing along. It's definitely not as easy to use as a full-size version or as nice to type on as a mechanical keyboard, but for a relatively compact build, I think they did a good job. There is a dedicated row for special icons, including full screen mode, changing the brightness of your iPad, popping on the keyboard on screen, copy and pasting, media controls for volume in addition to playing, pausing your music, and also locking the screen. Otherwise, there's also a Bluetooth icon on over here that you tap on to pair for the very first time, and also a light key that you tap on to cycle through the various colors and the brightness controls. The spacebar bar here feels pretty even no matter where you're typing on, so it does seem like a reasonably well-designed keyboard for the space that they had. So pairing it with an iPad is pretty quick and simple, although one limitation I did find about the overall design is the lack of adjustable angles on the hinge. It's really only positioned at this 120-degree elevated angle, so if you are putting it onto your lap and you want to get it at a more maybe narrow angle, there's no way of really adjusting this. However, it seems to be pretty stable once everything is set up. The Bluetooth connection range, which is at 10 meters or 33 feet, seems to be quite strong, although to be honest, for most people, they're going to be typing when the iPad is already in the keyboard case setup, so it's going to be quite close to the keyboard anyways. Regardless, it works pretty well, and if we do a quick typing test by opening up a note, you can see that there's very little latency between when I type and what pops up on screen. So if I do something very quickly, you can see that there's very little lag, which is quite impressive. I can lower the on-screen keyboard if I wanted to, and when I'm done, I can also exit out of this by using some software controls. For instance, things like brightness controls for the iPad's display, media controls, searching, as well as copy-pasting can all be accessed on the top row of the keyboard without any problems. So take a quick look at the backlight settings on this keyboard. So if we remove the iPad here, and we take a quick look at that, there is a dedicated key, as aforementioned, that pops on the backlight. It is a pretty soft glow, to be completely honest, and you do have to dim the light to get the full effect, but it works. You can see that the keys themselves aren't translucent, so if you look at them head on, it doesn't seem like the backlight is doing much, but if you have it at a tilted angle, it makes the keys a bit more visible. So indeed, if you are in a darkened room, or if you are on an airplane and you are trying to type while others are sleeping around you, this makes it a lot more feasible, and no real complaints there either. The bottom of the case, which again is made out of aluminum, however, is very slick, and there's no rubber padding, so if you have it on a very flush surface and you're constantly shifting the keyboard around, it does tend to slide a little bit easily, so that is one critique that we found in the design. But otherwise, again, the build here is quite strong. If we take a quick look at some of the other things that you can do with the backlight here, we can change the colors just by tapping on the multifunction key located on the side of the control for toggling the backlight on and off. And there's actually 3 different brightness settings, but they're pretty similar as far as the entire brightness is concerned. So let's turn the lights completely off, and that gives us a slightly better view of what the keyboard is like. You can see that the keys themselves, although they're visible, are again a little bit dim, but it definitely does still help, again, if you're in a darker environment. Here is the color changing key, so it turns to green, next it turns red into this turquoise color, purple, yellow, and then cycles kind of back to the original dark blue that it was set at. So the backlight definitely works and gives you a bit more of customization if you want to turn it on or off, and it works, pretty well. There's a memory feature as well, so it remembers the last color that it was on when you turn the case all the way on or all the way off. And again, the battery life here is pretty strong. The standby mode lasted me well over a month in terms of its performance and battery life testing, which is nice. And the LED indicators on the top also give you a better idea of what's happening to the battery if it's running low or if you need to charge it. So all in all, as far as being a pretty good keyboard case for the iPad Air, I would say that this is definitely an option to consider if you want something sleek, just doesn't add that much bulk to the iPad, and it's also detachable, making it a nice traditional case when you don't want to use it as a larger and bulkier keyboard case. However, there are definitely a few limitations, such as the fact that the case itself that holds the iPad is made out of plastic, and the fact that there's no real way to change the angle once you have it opened up and you're typing. And lastly, of course, there isn't any rubber feet, which means that if you are in a flat surface, sometimes it might slide around a little bit too easily. You can check out more details in our official written review, but for now, this has been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Review.